They're talking about mean girls. What about mean presidents? Because Donald Trump's been blaming Zelensky for derailing these London peace talks. Every single time it doesn't work out, it's Zelensky's fault, never Putin's. Let's speak to Greg Swenson, chair of Republicans Overseas UK. Hello there, Greg.
Hello, Alex.
This is just a bevy of wonderment. I've got you, I've got Peter Barnes. Honestly, it's just like,
nice.
I feel like life can't get much better right now. Apart from you could be in the studio, that would be even better. Now,
that would be nice.
Talk to me, what is going on with Donald Trump? Because it's very hard for me. Yeah, everyone wants to see this war end, right? But it's very hard for me to make sense of a situation where just last night, Moscow, the Kremlin, rained down a load of bombs on Kyiv, killing children, attacking civilians. They didn't stick to the Easter ceasefire, even though Putin's like, oh, I've put this in place. They were the ones who invaded Ukraine after all, whatever one thinks of Ukraine and whether it's corrupt or not, etc. You just don't go into countries with tanks and try and take it over. And yet when Donald Trump talks about resolving this and getting a deal done, it's always Zelensky he's blaming. Why?
Well, Alex, I have to correct you. It's not always Zelensky he's blaming. You saw some of that yesterday. But today, he came out with a scathing Truth Social post, scathing about Putin and really critical of Putin, especially for the bombing last night. And then the White House has an advert running on television here in the U.S. I'm in Washington right now. They've been running an advert very critical of Putin and basically blaming Putin. So I think that, this idea that he's only blaming Zelensky is not really accurate. And although at times it seems that way, but he usually follows with a criticism of Putin. He just wants to end this war, and he's going to criticize both of them until they do.
But is he going to take the fight to Putin? Because the deal that's been drawn up so far, which most of Europe isn't happy about, most of Europe says, look, if you allow Putin to keep what he's already taken via aggression, especially if you allow him to keep all those coastal areas and start playing games with shipments of fertilizer and food, specifically to the developing world, creating global inflation again, he's gotten away with murder, and he's going to be sniffing around Latvia and Lithuania next, and they're genuinely terrified about that. And they look at this deal and say it doesn't seem to go far enough, but kind of feel like, because Europe's so useless and can't agree on anything else apart from what they all dislike, that, they don't really have any choice. Do you think at any point that he's going to go after Putin? Because what I've heard essentially is, the way he's going to do it is economically with drill, baby, drill, and try and scupper Russia's economy. But it doesn't seem to me like Putin's really being punished for his behaviour.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to punish Putin. I mean, I guess, sanctions, yes, an embargo on Russia that could punish Putin, but he doesn't really care if his people are starving. So I'm not sure that would do it. Perhaps the only way is to beat Putin is to win this war. However, I've seen no European countries volunteer to put boots on the ground.
Oh, no. Apart from Britain, of course. So Keir Starmer, leader of Coalition of the Willing, he was like, we'll send everyone there, don't you worry, before anyone even made a plan. He's like, our soldiers will be gone, they'll be there, we're always going to be there.
But that was post, post-truce or post-end of the war. In her, I know Keir Starmer was, agreeing to provide security about the ceasefire, but not to win this war. And so it's funny, look, and we thought deterrence was working in Trump's first term. It's peace through strength. It worked. He was very hostile to Putin in his first term. He's the only American president to call Putin out for killing his own people in 1999. Bush didn't do it. Clinton didn't do it. Obama didn't do it. And so, he put sanctions on Nord Stream 2, which, of course, Biden took the sanctions off on Nord Stream 2. He sent Javelin missiles to Kyiv. I mean, he was very aggressive on Putin, but that was deterrence. But it's too late for deterrence, unfortunately. So now he just wants to end this thing. Not everyone will be happy with it. And, I guess the only alternative would be to continue the stalemate and have more body bags.
Yeah, that is a good point. How do you stop Putin without essentially going and, picking a fight that might turn into an international brawl that could become a third world war?
4,500 nuclear weapons in his possession. So that's dangerous.
Gosh. Let's talk now about the trade war with China and all of these tariffs. There's a suggestion he's considering backing down on his trade war with China because the US economy is suffering, that he could cut tariffs on imports to between 50 and 65%. That's according to the Wall Street Journal, and that's amid fears that the damage being wrought on the world's biggest economy is just too much. Do you think this, what he's been doing in terms of his, obsession with tariffs and throwing tariffs about the place like, well, I don't know, like what, I can't finish that sentence. But do you think it's been, do you think it's been a good policy? Has he been a bit overzealous with it, perhaps?
Well, I think he's overzealous because he's President Trump. He's provocative, he's unorthodox. This is really important for the long run. And in the short run, he's going to take some heat from it. His polling, his polling is down, his numbers are down, but he's willing to live with that because in the long term, this will work. And it's not really that big a deal for the U.S. economy. A lot of the Western press, especially the American liberal press, has made a big deal out of this and saying it's inflationary and it's a tax on the consumer. I mean, I've never seen the Democrats see a tax they didn't love. So it's kind of funny coming from the Democrats and the left that, oh, taxes are bad. And they are bad. I'm not arguing for taxes, but these are necessary to realign the economy to less consumption, more production, and also realign the Chinese economy from less production, more consumption. We can't continue funding this balance with 36 trillion in debt. We're bankrolling the NATO with we're paying $1 trillion in debt service a year. So, we can't do it all. So I think it's important that he does this. He's taking some heat for it. I don't think it's justified, but anything that Trump does, gets a lot of heat from the left and the media. Same thing in the U.S. So I think it'll work in the long run, and he's willing to sit through some difficult polling to get there. I
mean, one thing that definitely did work is under Trump 1.0, when he said, I want a trade deal with Brexit Britain, the government just said, chlorinated chicken, no thanks, we're still best mates with Brussels. And now he's thrown some tariffs about the place. Idiot Rachel Reeves is actually doing something quite sensible, which is saying, right, let's get a trade deal and quick. But my concern is, and I don't know, because I get the impression that part of the tariff thing is about also exacting certain conditions from trading partners, whether it's make sure that fentanyl doesn't cross my border, make sure those migrants aren't being bussed into, your hinterlands to come here. With the UK, I'd imagine it's going to be don't cozy up too much to the EU, protect freedom of speech, and whatever games you're playing with China right now, you should probably stop. And yet, I kind of feel like those are things that the Labour Party aren't going to be able to live up to.
Well, Alex, you bring up some great points, and I'm not sure they can either. But if they were smart, they would, because not only would it please President Trump, it would please the UK voters, who are the ones that are suffering under Labour right now. And so, it would be really great if they opened the market to U.S. products. So it's not just tariffs, it's non-tariff trade barriers like chlorinated chicken, which I find hysterical because it's so stupid. But it's, look, the American chicken is 21% cheaper than British chicken. I love British chicken, don't get me wrong, but it's really important to have free and fair trade. And right now it's not free and fair. So I think the UK consumer would benefit from American chicken. It has, it's chlorinated chlorinated cleansed, but it also has 2% salmonella versus 15% in the UK. So I'd rather have chlorine than salmonella, personally.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same chlorine we put in our water and put on our salads. But one thing I don't understand here, Greg, right, is when it comes to all the things that America might be desperate to be able to sell into Britain, I didn't realise chicken was so important. I'd imagine you've got plenty of chicken eaters yourself. I mean, all the chicken manufacturers in America going, we really got to get into Britain. I didn't think that was sort of product number one.
Yeah. And it might not be, Alex. I think it's just one that the EU and the UK, even post-Brexit, like to bring up as a reason not to have that evil American food in the country. Right. So, it really doesn't matter statistically. And you know what, frankly, international trade, even with China, it's 2% of U.S. GDP. It's not like we're dependent on trade like Canada and Mexico are, and the Germans for sure. So all this fear of economic destruction in the United States is totally overblown. And frankly, it's probably overblown in the UK too.
It's such a weird thing. You just get idiots repeating chlorinated chicken. What about the chlorinated chicken? And they don't understand that it was the EU who invented the sort of myth of the demon chlorinated chicken, because they want the UK to subscribe to all of their phyto rules and their sort of like, you know, litany of regulations when it comes to agriculture and bendy bananas. But this is the same EU that presided over the donkey meat scandal. People were getting their takeaways to find out that, you know, things like Rudolph and red rum were in it.
Yeah, it's funny. And you know what they should do is just deregulate and liberate their economies. They won't, but that's what they should do. That's what the voters want. But these center-right and center-left parties refuse to listen to the voters, so they still talk about, you know, the existential crisis of climate change instead of liberating their economies and letting people grow, you know, have wage growth.
The existential crisis of chlorinated chicken. Greta Thunberg will be on that bandwagon, I'll tell you that much. Peter, I could see out the corner of my eye scribbling away there like an enthusiastic little clerk. Share your thoughts.
Yeah, hi Greg, it's nice to see you.
Hello, Peter.
So my thing, I'll run through, like Trump and Zelensky. The reason Trump is going after Zelensky is that Trump is legacy hunting. Let's not forget, this is the last time he can be president. He's trying to build the legacy of the president that ended, well, that prevented World War III. That's what he's looking for. So he's doing everything he can to bring the people to the table, and it's easier to keep blaming the guy who's not got nuclear weapons than it is to blame the guy who's got nuclear weapons. That's what that's all about. Trump and tariffs. The first sign of weakness on Trump's part came when he said all this applies to all the tariffs apart from smartphones and laptops and things like that, because it was a huge sector and it was a huge part of all of it. And the minute that that started to kind of wane a little bit, the whole thing was going to come tumbling down. Donald Trump has proven very rightly that America has been taken for a free ride for too long, and he's right to bring that up. But the way that he's went about it was, you know, too gung-ho, too bull in a china shop, typical Trump. But he's not wrong in principle. And you have to look at the number of countries that have gone to the White House now that want a free trade agreement, that he's actually put free trade back in the political arena, that it hasn't been for quite a long time. Now, Rachel Reeves is on the issue of China. She's right, as it was in a Telegraph piece a couple of weeks ago, to say that the UK cannot back away from Beijing, which is what America want, because you are right, that a huge part of these trade deals is don't do this in terms of fentanyl, don't do this in terms of China and all that kind of stuff, because Beijing and the UK are so interlinked now. The amount of Chinese money sloshing around public institutions is terrifying. They are in our nuclear stations, they are in our gas stations, they're in our energy sector, they're in our universities, they are everywhere. America is bang on, just keep saying, what do you think you're doing allowing them running amok inside of you? It is absolutely obscene to me that it's ever got that far. But the idea that we could just pull all that away, I don't think it's as easy as many of the people in the Trump administration think it should be. But yet we have to start winding that back. This is the issue of UK and China is a huge problem, and it's a complicated issue because, you know, our university sector, I think it's 50 million quid a year they give in terms of endowments and bursaries. They basically fund most universities. You know, it's absolutely obscene to me that it's been allowed to get this far. And the big one that we don't talk about is the amount of Chinese ownership of property. The property market is dominated by Chinese corporations. And the minute that we start tinkering around saying China can't do this, China can't do that, they start to mess around with our property market. You think food's expensive now? Wait till we go into real recession, which is what China is capable of doing. One of the reasons I think Trump has backed off is he's actually seen that when China flexes its economic might, it has a huge ripple effect. And every one of America's allies is going, please don't.
Well, it owns a third of the world's debt, doesn't it? It owns more world debt than the IMF, the ECB, or the OECD nations put together.
And when people start to understand that, you know, China doesn't
need...
And
all the minerals.
I mean, even when I was back at university, we always said that Russia will invade you, China will simply repossess you, because they already own you, you know. And we talk about how, like, Putin infects certain nations in terms to get his own way. China buys its way in. It has bought its way into the United Kingdom, and Trump and the White House is right to say you've got to stop this. But I think we're so far down the road now that just to pull the rug, I don't think is possible. But we have to find a way to wind it back. And even if it takes Donald Trump being as brazen as he is to say this to our faces, it should have been said 20, 30 years ago for someone to go, stop. And that's the reality of
Thankfully,
it.
finally someone is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are going to have to stop this segment, because we've got to take an advert break, the last advert break of the show, in fact. Greg, it was lovely having you on the show. Next time, come down here. He always smells lovely, Greg. He's a very classy
He's also
man.
a really nice man.
Oh, he's the nicest man on earth.
He's the nicest person I've ever met.
He's always the first to buy a round of drink. I'm the second, I'm the third, I'm the fourth, I'm the fifth. He's one of my best friends. Right,